welcome back to the Exist Better YouTube channel. Today is going to be a bit of a story time video about just some general experiences that I've had, and I think now is absolutely the time to be talking about them. As I said in the last video, the reason I am so focused on political things right now is that I don't believe they are political things. I believe they are shadow things. They are trauma things. And that is becoming more and more evident as we see that people are not, debating over policies. They are in outright war with each other. And that does not just come from nowhere. It comes from very specific places in the human psyche. So basically in this video, I'm just going to talk about my experience, why I used to sort of generally loosely identify as a liberal person, and why I don't anymore. It is something that took place really, I would say, gradually over the last couple of years. I started to become disillusioned. For me, liberalism was just another layer to pull off, like another layer of the shadow work onion that was just an ideology that was just sort of sitting on top of me, but it had nothing really to do with me or my values or who I am. Disclaimers, I'm not conservative. I don't have any political affiliation at this point, and I very much am happy with that. So this isn't me trying to skew you. This is not, my channel's not about trying to get you to subscribe to a political system. I hope that's obvious by now. Really, the aim of my channel is to speak to people who are maybe in some of these transitional points. People who are truly interested in living better lives, a better quality of life, feeling better, having fewer negative emotions and more positive ones, being more honest with yourself, more authentic in who you are, all that stuff. So I think a lot of the people, if you've come to my work from the mental health side of things, my articles talking about anxiety and sensitivity and all that, then I just want to say first that this is not going to be an attack on anyone. This is not going to be an attack on your perspective. If you do identify as liberal, I am completely here for liberals and anybody who wants to move beyond their current ideology to something that feels better. Basically, a shedding of all ideologies and, replacing that with your true identity, who you actually are, so that, you don't need an ideology anymore. You have yourself back. So that's what you live from. Those are the value systems that you live from. So quick background on me. I come from a more conservative culture, a more conservative neighborhood. I went to a religious school. I did that whole song and dance, and I hated every single aspect of it. It was not for me in any way. Conservatism, religion, tradition, you name it, nothing from that realm was for me. A lot of people, I believe from my own observations, many people who fall into liberalism do so because they were like me. They fall into liberalism as this default. And they're basically like, well, I grew up conservative. I did all these things, Frankly, for a lot of people, conservatism is very traumatic. It's very traumatizing, I'll just say, and conservatives love to roll their eyes at that kind of statement. But, to be a very free-spirited child and a very sensitive and emotional kid, most importantly, a very intuitive, sensitive, emotional kid, conservatism is straight up traumatizing for that type of person. So I think the default of what happens to people who grow up like that and have those qualities in them is they fall as a default right into liberalism. And they say, well, if not that, then this certainly appears better than that, right? So it's a reaction to conservatism. It's not an authentic choice. It's a reaction to conservatism. And when we're reacting to, this is a little side note, when we're reacting to, it's never an authentic choice. It's a response. It's a trauma reaction. So it's not a response. It's not an authentic response. It's a trauma reaction. So it's almost as if our nervous systems choose liberalism for us because we're running from its opposite. Okay. So that is definitely what happened to me. Everyone has their own story. So through my 20s, what I started to notice was that people who very heavily identified as liberal were, some of them were in a lot of pain, and they weren't moving through it. So they were getting sort of, in the last video I talked about how we move from suppressing emotion down to processing, we feel way worse, and then we move all the way up to healing, feeling better. So they were doing like half of that, but they were staying in they weren't even in the processing phase. They were just in the wallowing, and they were just in the suffering phase, really. So like feeling really bad, talking about how bad they feel, and just doing that all day, every day. And this is not everyone, this is just, there were a handful of people who I knew. Simultaneously, I was starting to realize that none of my personal needs were being met by this, this friend group, partners, anybody in that realm, anyone in that left realm. They were very much not interested in like really getting to know me or who I was. I found it extremely hard to have like any real closeness with anybody. And again, I'm not saying I played no role in this. I absolutely played a role in this, but this is something that I'm seeing in liberal culture. And what I'm going to call it is this whitewashing of the individual. And I've mentioned this before. I've said, Carl Jung warned about this problem where we're whitewashing the individual in the name of statistics, science, medicine. Here's what everyone else is doing. Here's what you have to do too if you want to be a good person. And if you don't believe these things, if you don't believe, if you don't basically join the cult mentality, then you are just a stupid, asshole, terrible person. What really blew my mind is there were a couple of occasions where I brought up points to different people. Like I'm someone who likes to debate kind of, and for me it's sort of fun. And so, like I'm always like playing devil's advocate with everybody because like they'll share a perspective and I'll say, well, what about this? Have you ever considered this? And what I noticed with a few people who I did this with, that it wasn't okay. Like there was no openness whatsoever to learning new information. It was like, you're a bad person, or if not you're a bad person, it was just like, you're misunderstanding. That's why you're saying those things. And for me, it was like, no, I'm not I understand your point of view. I have a different one. And so I had a couple of these experiences. And again, this was like taking place over time. There were all these limits to how happy I could be, to how much I could grow, to how much I could share, to how much I could rely on other people. There were very few people who I could really rely on in ways that I needed people just me being me, I couldn't get what I needed to feel okay. And so I'm realizing this, I'm going through this very traumatic learning process, right? Because, the kid who rebels from the conservative family, the conservative culture, neighborhood, school system, they run away to get, and for me, it was like I was really hoping to find all that stuff I was looking for. I really thought I was going to find it. And so over a few years of just just being hit in the face with it over and over and over again, you can't get your needs met here. You can't express yourself here. You can, but no one's going to really care or understand or receive it. There, it was just like, you are not going to get anything you want here. like how many times is it going to hit you in the face? And so the reason I got into this situation in the first place was because I didn't understand myself. I didn't understand my own needs. I didn't understand who I was and what my values were. And so the reality was that my values and my needs and everything clashed completely with this liberal community that I was living in. But because I was running from conservatism, I was still just holding on because I was like, what else is there? In America, it's very, very hard to find anybody who is anything besides liberal or conservative. And I don't mean this in how they vote. Obviously you can just avoid talking about politics with people, but I mean in every decision they make. And I go in, you can watch my video, The Conservative and Liberal Shadows Explained, but it's very hard to find people who aren't operating in one of these modes that I talk about in that video. It's even people who aren't super political or calling themselves that, they're in one of these two modes. It is a lifestyle, it's a belief system. So, my nervous system was super on high alert all the time. And so there was this whole period of the conservative thing didn't work, the liberal thing didn't work. I have literally nobody. I have nobody to confide in. I put all my money into this education system. I got nothing in return. I moved to this neighborhood. I didn't connect with anybody. It was all a big, everything was just turning into this big, giant coping mechanism. And, people, young people, it's there's just so many things that you can get addicted to just avoid having to do anything, any work, or feel any pain, So pretty much everyone I had grown up with in my teens through my 20s were either doing the whole conservative thing, settling down and having kids, and just that worked for them. They were just shoving aside everything else. They were we're not into creativity or growth or exploration. That's baby shit. We're just having kids and we're going to be accountants or something. And I was like, okay, great, that I can't do that. I know that. Then I got all these other people over here who are supposedly they've got all the answers, but all they're doing is sitting around and drinking every day and smoking weed and eating all this garbage food and, blaming their entire lives on the government. So it was okay, there was this whole period where I was literally just, I was living by myself. I had I had nothing because I had invested all of myself in dead ends, dead end people, dead end school, dead end job, dead end everything. And it's not to say that any of those things were dead end, bad. They were all, a lot of these people were good people. It was a good job. It was, but for me, it was all dead ends. And I didn't know that. So there was the extremely traumatic process of just sitting alone every single day, just waking up and being what's going to happen now? What's going to happen now? and just sitting there by myself and going like, what else could I do here? And this is when I started really doing a lot of shadow work, because it was like, I'm in so much pain. What else could I do besides just really try to solve things now? Like just give up on like none of it worked. And the grieving process of none of it worked. Like nothing, nowhere I've ever gone in my entire life was for me. The only thing I could do was lie a little bit, not realize I was lying, and kind of latch on to different groups and try them out. So I was latching onto these groups, trying them out. It just kept not working. So eventually I got to this place where I was like, I'm just gonna be alone. That's really what I've been this whole time. So I might as well just be honest about it, So I like kind of like brushed all these people out of my life, which was very easy. Like they didn't, nobody really cared. Nobody noticed I was gone. It was just like, cool, whatever. And then I really went into the shadow work stuff, like hardcore. Learned all this stuff, grieved all this stuff. When things don't work out, there's a grieving process. So when you have like, and this goes for everybody, not just me, when you have like a 10, 20, 30, 40-year period of trying things that didn't quite pan out, that's a lot of grief. That's a lot of grief piled up, and I see other people who follow this platform going through some of that, maybe not this exact topic, but going through that grief, and they're just like, what is happening? They're like, am I okay? And it's like, yeah, you're actually more okay than ever, because you're acknowledging how much grief is there, and it's going to be way more than you think is normal or possible. It's going to be a lot. Whew. Okay, let me try to like wrap this up a little bit. So in the past couple of months, with everything that's been going on I was already kind of disillusioned with liberalism. It didn't work out at all for me personally. And then everything that's been happening recently has really like blown my mind, to be honest. Starting with coronavirus and ending with, the racial issues that are going on right now. I was starting to see like liberal media and liberal people's reactions to it. And it was so obvious to see that it was all a big manipulation. Like liberal media in general has just been mind-blowing to me. The level of manipulation that is happening is so disturbing. I've never seen anything like it. I was not even aware that it was that bad until, like I said, until basically the coronavirus stuff started. And it is liberal media in particular that has this special slant to it that is so geared toward keeping people powerless and keeping people in their pain. That's not to say that anyone's pain isn't legitimate or valid, but keeping people there and profiting from them there. I started to really see this cult mentality for what it was. Like, it wasn't just in my head, it wasn't just my imagination. It was happening on this like national scale, where it was like, if you don't believe these two guys on TV, and you're a horrible person, you're anti-science. The level of codependence of, if you don't agree with me, I'm gonna lash out, or if you won't join our group in this particular way and say our slogans in this particular way and have it mean this for you, it can't mean anything else for you. That is the narcissist codependent relationship. I was finally out of all of my personal trauma around all that stuff, and I was like far back enough, and it was just clear as day. This is why I'm sharing this, because I want people to be able to move out of both of these modalities, because they are polarities, and polarities do not hold all the answers. At some point, everyone has to save themselves from that, because, what I've noticed about liberal culture is that there's not a lot of hand holding. There's not a lot of genuine one-on-one support for individuals who are having problems. It's a lot of posturing where it's like, I believe in these things and that makes me good. But when one of those people from that group really needs help, there's no one there to help them, because they're just an individual. It doesn't matter. All that matters is the cause. All that matters are the hashtags. And when you actually go into those cultures, in my experience, there is no support. There is no understanding. There is no healing happening. I can't continue to subscribe to those values or that system, because that system is crumbling. And the thing that I really want to drive home here is that had I not gone through that process alone of struggling and being confused and in pain and showing up to do shadow work every single day, like just following whatever teachers I could find who knew what they were talking about, I know for a fact if I hadn't been doing them, I would be lost in ideologies right now. Just like everybody else who is lost in an ideology, they're not feeling better, they're not empowering themselves, they're not able to even support other people who need to be empowered. They're just, lost. They're just fighting, they're just scrambling. And it's because they're not doing this work. Most people are not teaching the real practices, the real work. Most people are teaching like a cutesy avoid the real issues way, or some people are teaching shadow stuff in like a very academic, intellectual way, like a very Jordan Peterson way, and there are limits to that too. So I want to be real clear here. This work is emotional work, and if you're not doing any emotional work, you're going to fall for all kinds of things. You're not going to be aware. You'll fall for any type of manipulation that there is out there in the world right now. So that's everything I wanted to say on this topic. Yes, so if you like this video, feel free to subscribe at the link below. I'm very tired. You can sign up for the newsletter. The School of Self is opening soon. You can see a preview at the link below. That's all. I will see you next time.